Again, fellow audiophiles, I am Wave Theory, and these are the Rhapsodio Infinity Mark II in-ear monitors. These are $3,000 US, 6 balanced armature driver IEMs. These were a loan from a friend of the channel, a patron, who has maybe a slight sadistic streak because these nozzles are huge and they can be uncomfortable for people with narrow ear canals like myself. But that said, I powered through to listen to these and found out that they are really a fantastic sounding in-ear monitor that if you don't have narrow ear canals could really be a solid option for you. So again, these are a loan. They'll be going back to that friend of the channel or that patron very soon. Rhapsodio has no idea that I'm doing this review or have it, so they will be as surprised as you are to see this video drop. So all thoughts that you hear are mine and mine alone. So find out all of those juicy details about the Rhapsodio Infinity Mark II right on the other side of shameless self-promotion.
Hi, it's me again, 14 months later and a whole foot taller. Now, since Wave Theory liked the first 10,000 subscriber play button I made him, maybe he wants a 25,000 subscriber play button. This can only happen if you subscribe though. Now, since over 60% of the watch time comes from unsubscribed viewers, I'm going to need you to subscribe. You can also sign up for his Patreon or send him money in PayPal. Links in the description. Now, on to the video.
Alright, once again we'll do overhead view here so that we can look at the accessories and the packaging of the Rhapsodio Infinity Mark II. Comes in this nice wooden box here, right? Pretty quality stuff, and the lid slides right out and you can see that they have grooves. Okay, there that this thing slides into and out of. That's pretty cool and a nice touch on such a high-priced IEM. But we're not done with the packaging yet. Okay, nice cushiony going on there. All right, and yeah, this lid just slides right back in there. Then we get this metal case right here with a screw-on lid. And inside, we get probably my poor packaging job here of a bunch of accessories, such as the stock cable, which comes in single-ended 3.5mm output. It is a 2-pin connection there on the IEM end. This cable, honestly, is pretty cheap and not great. Okay, for a $3,000 IEM, I think we probably could have expected a little bit more there in terms of like both ergonomics and build quality and that sort of thing. But I have a feeling that on a $3,000 IEM, most of you are probably not going to use this stock cable very much. You're going to move on to an aftermarket cable, which I have one over here. Okay, pretty quickly, I imagine. But then we get this little carrying pouch if you want to do that, and then we have some tips. Okay, and so forth, which I did not use the stock tips. I used my own tips because, again, this was a loan from a friend of the channel. I did not want to mess up their tips, and then you get this little carrying or cleaning cloth that comes in there as well. Okay. So yeah, the packaging and all of that is decent. Oh, sometimes this does not screw on. There we go. Got it. All right. There we go. All right, the IEMs themselves. And they look cool, right? Have that nice purple with the, like the flecks going on in there. I think it's probably like a resin kind of finish in there. And then, of course, the shell is mostly see-through, so you can look in and see all of those balanced armature drivers in there, okay? Sharp looking, well made. Here is my biggest complaint, and I do mean biggest, okay? About the IEM. Those nozzles are enormous. Okay? People with narrow ear canals, like myself, need not apply here. So we might as well go ahead and get into that aspect of it here. I could not stand to have these in my ear for more than like half hour, 45 minutes at a time. Maybe push it to an hour if I was feeling a little bit stubborn. And that's because these nozzles on here, there is no such thing as a tip small enough for these to be comfortable in my narrow ear canals. So these right here are the, oh goodness, the name is escaping me. I should have written it down. Okay, Divinus Velvets. I will put the name up on the screen and then also down in the description. Okay. These are the small tips, and I'm always a small IEM tip user and all that. But look, even with this small tip on here, do you see how, like, there's, like, almost no room for that tip to compress downward? So there's little to no cushion in here against the walls of my ear canal when this is inserted in my ear there. And so that can get quite uncomfortable for me relatively quickly. So it's a big nozzle. It's a fairly deep insertion nozzle. And so again, I think that that kind of eliminates a potential market segment by people with narrow ear canals. If you need small tips on your IEMs, generally, I would exercise extreme caution and try these out at a show or something like that before you buy, because yeah, I had big time comfort issues with these. And so again, that's why that when we talk sound here in a moment is really going to have to be more like sonic impressions, because I just physically could not have these in my ear long enough to do a true deep dive evaluation on the sound, but I will give you some impressions. So let's go ahead and get to that. All right. Test gear that I use for this include the stock cable. You see this right here. This is the Effect Audio Eros S2 IEM cable right here, which ended up being like the cable that I preferred the most with this IEM. But I also tried like the entirety of Effect Audio's Signature Series 2 line to go with it. I also used the Cord Hugo 2 with this PW Audio RCA connection to 4.4 millimeter adapter. And then this right here is its matching 2Go streamer as a Roon endpoint. All digital music listeners, so lossless and high-res, FLAC files, DSD files, either played locally with this as a Roon endpoint, or in the case of FLAC files, they could have been streamed from Qobuz. I also used a couple of DAPs primarily to play local files, either in lossless or high-res FLAC or DSD, in the FIO M21 and the iBasso DX260. Links in the description for my reviews of those. I also tried a couple of desktop setups. I've had these in for a while, so I did a review of the Audma Maestro HPA1 way back in the spring. And these got some brief time on there. And then I also tried my main desktop rig right now, or like super high-end reference desktop system, which has tubes in it, right? And that would be the Sonor Optical Rendu right now, which is a Roon endpoint, direct USB into a Lampezator Baltic 3 DAC, and then XLR output from that into my LTA Z10E amplifier. These are high enough in impedance at their 32 or 36 ohm, whatever the number is in there, that I didn't really notice a whole lot of hiss or anything like that from the Z10E from its low-level output in particular there. Okay. So I think in here somewhere, there is a fantastic sounding IEM that very well could be like reference caliber in sound. I'm not pulling your leg on that. I do believe that is true. The issue is like, not only are these really uncomfortable for me, and your mileage may certainly vary on that aspect of it, these are signal chain picky. All those signal chains that I mentioned, the sound on these changed fairly noticeably, even when swapping out different cables from the same company, did the sound change to an appreciable degree. All right, so generally speaking, I think these are mostly tuned in the range that most people are going to consider it neutral. It does have very good bass and treble extension in both directions, so it digs really deep. It has nice airiness to it, but neither of those regions are particularly far forward. So there's not a bass shelf for excess rumble, and I'm thinking that the bass level on here, the presence of it, is a little bit below the Harman 2018 in-ear target, which I think has a little bit of an elevated bass shelf to begin with, but this doesn't have that. It's a little bit shy of that, but there's still good, healthy rumble and sub-bass presence going on up there. There's also very good tonality throughout the entire frequency spectrum. Pretty accurate and realistic balances between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics, again, throughout the entire frequency range. With one exception, there is a little bit of extra bite and thinness sometimes that comes out in the upper mids, lower treble. And when I say that these are source chain picky, that's the range that gets affected the most. Okay, on the M21 DAP, on the DX260 DAP, regardless of cable, there was just a little bit of like metallic-y kind of, excessively metallic-y kind of timbre in the upper mids, lower treble that gave these a little bit of bite to them. And it wasn't necessarily super detrimental to the overall sound, but it did have an impact on timbre, which made them sound a little bit unnatural to me for like vocals and cymbal crashes and that sort of thing. Particularly female vocals, just because they have more harmonic information up in the same range as like cymbals and that sort of thing. So they just sounded a little bit thin and like metallic-y, okay, to me in timbre up there. Okay, I was able to smooth that out using the combination of the Hugo 2 and this Effect Eros S2 cable right here. When I got that combination together, I thought I got the overall smoothest tonality throughout the entire frequency spectrum. Now, these did rumble and slam a little bit harder when I tried some of Effect's other cables, like their new AXC, which I just did a review for, see a link in the description, and their Aries S2 line in there. I got more like thump and rumble out of the Infinity Mark IIs with those cables, even on the Hugo 2, but I still had that kind of just that hint of metallic-y timbre in the upper mids, lower treble that I didn't love, but the Eros S2 smoothed that out. All of those cables are better than the stock cable, though. I will say that much in there. Okay. So, I mean, like, and then how did it do on the desktop system? I hadn't landed on the Eros by that time, and I still kind of noticed that metallic-y timbre just a little bit in there. But yeah, that system there, like, slammed pretty good. Like, again, didn't have the bass shelf kind of presence, but provided the most bass impact, okay, to the sound on these there as well. Now, fine-grained comparisons with other IEMs. I don't have as many IEMs, or have not reviewed as many IEMs as I have headphones, so I can't really go into depth or detail about that, other than to say that, you know, given my numerous but brief listening sessions on these, my impression is that in here is a reference caliber IEM at $3,000 US. It just takes some patience to get it out. And then again, if you have really narrow ear canals, exercise extreme caution before dropping $3,000 on these, because they could be very uncomfortable for you. All right, but yeah, I was able to find a signal chain to get dialed into a sound that I liked for the time that I could comfortably wear these physically. So yeah, I think there really is a solid IEM in here, potentially reference caliber at $3,000 US. But yeah, you really have to be thoughtful about your signal chain and what you're doing with them, which is not uncommon, right? Like on the headphone side, I've had things like the Focal Utopia and the Fostex TH900 Mark II series, both headphones that I love a lot, but they are super source chain picky and all of that. So I don't think that's deal breaking. You just have to have knowledge of that going in when you consider this IEM here. But yeah, there it is. Probably reference caliber IEM. If you have narrow ear canals, be very careful, try before you buy, and then be aware of the signal chain pickiness behind the Rhapsodio Infinity Mark II. All right, I'm Wave Theory. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal and my Patreon. I also have YouTube channel memberships available now, so check those out where you can do things like talk to me on Discord and get access to early release videos and that sort of thing. Thanks again for watching. And as always, enjoy the music.